calculus course as a senior if you go down that avenue, but that's not for all students either. I can tell you what colleges are telling people across the state of California, that even though kids have had calculus as a senior in high school, many of them are retaking it, especially if they're going into the engineering and sciences, because they want to make sure that they have the foundational skills, and there are some missing pieces.
I've also read that the only mathematician involved in helping to develop these standards refused to sign off on it because he was so disgusted with how low those standards were. Did you? I mean,
I'm not aware of that.
One mathematician.
That I'm not aware of.
There's and read several mathematicians don't even understand how you're teaching basic arithmetic, that it's that convoluted. So I mean, do you understand what it is that you're expecting these kids to learn?
I've got an example of how they're teaching.
I'd like to see it.
This is a success story where to find a circumference of a circle, they want to give the students a piece of string and a ruler. That's their idea. It's a success story. Read it off the web there.
I'd like to say something. I've been in education for years, not directly, but I have a kid and I talk to a lot whenever. And to me, education is way bigger than bread box. You know, I mean, it's just a huge subject, and there's got to be you know, some wiggle room for all kinds of ideas, and then the reality is that you have all kinds of kids that just don't fit into the you know, square pegs and things. So the idea that somehow this is all can all be simplified into, you know, it's not going to happen. It's a real complex subject, and it's just got to be kind of, I think, looked up as pretty wide open intellectually.
Thank you. So there are some shifts that have occurred based on what we used to have with the California state standards and the new Common Core state standards. And Chris is going to talk about some of the language arts shifts, and I will talk about some of the math shifts that have happened. So Chris,
Okay.
I'll let you. The one on the right.
So some shifts in English language arts and literacy. There's a focus on nonfiction that is going to be increased. This is not to say that fiction is going away. In fact, I think one of the issues that we came across, there were some teachers who thought, well, if you're looking at a 50-50 or 30-70 kind of split, then that means we can't teach literature. It's talking about across the entire curriculum. I think that's one of the pieces of the Common Core that's really kind of interesting and appealing, is that it's not intended just to be English teachers and math teachers. You know, it's supposed to be every teacher engaging in literacy, whether it's reading or writing or speaking. So it's intended to broaden the base of student literacy, not limit it. Learn about the world by reading, read more challenging material closely. So it's not so much volume, it's not reading, you know, huge, you know, pieces of literature necessarily. It could be maybe slightly shorter, but very dense, very meaningful work where students get into the work a little more closely. I mean, why are Cliff's Notes one of the top selling, you know, books out there? It's because we're asking kids to read too much volume without really getting into the meaning of the work. And so we can say we've assigned a 600-page novel, but if all the students had time to do was skim it, and unfortunately that's what happens a lot of times, then they're not really getting much out of it. And so maybe we need to be more selective about what we ask students to read. And there's a lot of terrific nonfiction out there which complements the literature. You know, it's not just reading, you know, it's reading primary sources. It's getting things, you know, not second, third, fourth hand, but getting it right from the original author. Discuss reading using evidence. Again, the idea is, I have an idea, and am I just going to put it out there and hope that people believe me because they like me? Or are they going to believe me because I'm making a good argument? You know, that I have evidence to back up what I'm saying. Writing nonfiction using evidence again, and increasing academic vocabulary. You know, we all have our opinions about technology. I think there's some great things about it, but this stuff, the texting, I think that really it really shortchanges the whole thinking process, you know, everything's 140 characters. And that's really not encouraging students to think deeply about things. So that's some of the shifts in ELA literacy. There will be more nonfiction involved, but
What kind of
fiction.
nonfiction, like biographies and autobiographies?
Yes, biographies, autobiographies, essays,
Of whom?
histories. Well, it goes,
People selected by their teachers, perhaps, you know.
well,
So Are we
anything,
getting away from like the classics?
oh no,
We're going into the biography of, autobiography of, you know, President Obama? Is that
Yeah.
where we're going with this?
no. I mean, why, I don't know why that particular person is mentioned, but anyway, it's you know, it's an issue of, just like we had before, all the core texts, all the supplementary texts are approved by the Board of Education. They go through the review process, and that's who approves it. It's not up to individual teachers just to pick and choose whatever they want to read.
And where is that information made available? What point in time would parents be able to go and
Well,
see what type of books and, you know,
Sure.
literature will be, their students will be?
well, there's currently, if you go to the district website, a place where you can find all the books that are approved.
Okay,
Everything is there.
and that, what will be the will be on the curriculum for their grade? Or-
Yeah, it's done by, I think it's done by grade level. It might be done by groups of grades. It might be, you know, grades 9 and 10 or 11 and 12. But it's broken out by grade level. And it's there currently. That's the way it's always been. It's always been a board-approved list of books that can be read. So it will go through some changes. I don't think it's so much an issue of throwing things out as maybe making some additions. I don't think it's an issue of saying that we are no longer going to read, you know, Shakespeare. You know, that's not going to happen.
So what's the thought as to why increasing nonfiction is more beneficial?
Well, I think the issue is, when you talk about fiction, there is a lot of opinion involved. There's a lot of interpretation involved.
There's a lot of interpretation in nonfiction
Exactly,
as well.
exactly. And so, what I think the feeling has been, and again, this isn't only in English classes. I'm talking about history classes, where literature is not usually part of the menu.
I could argue that there is plenty of opinion and interpretation in history.
Oh,
as
sure
well.
there is. Yeah, I'm not saying that nonfiction is absent of opinion. It is totally opinion. But it's another way for students to engage with writing, with reading, and with speaking that is not necessarily literature. It's not to put one above the other. It's to simply say that there needs to be a recognition that students need to interact with high-quality fiction and high-quality nonfiction. And I think that in the English curriculum, there has been a very heavy emphasis. When I was teaching it, it was almost all literature. There was almost no nonfiction whatsoever. And I think that shortchanged students a little bit. There is some terrific writing out there that they should be reading, in addition to the fiction. So it's not one or the other, it is more of a balance.
And with this shift, how are the teachers going to be prepared to now teach this way when they've all gone through the same school system that did not prepare them to teach this way?
It's going to be a process. You know, we just had a session today with 10th grade English teachers, and
So our
they
children
are,
are going to be guinea pigs for a new process.
They have been for years.
there's always,
I
you
mean,
know,
every
it's,
year it's something new, as a teacher.
yeah.
Every year there's something new.
There's always going to be something out there that people feel is going to help kids. I mean, that's the old issue of intention. You know, is it to provide students with a more well-rounded experience and to help, you know, develop their critical thinking skills? I think that's the idea.
I applaud your wanting to do things, you know, read original sources, but since Common Core no longer allows for cursive to be taught, a lot of original sources will be unreadable by our kids, like, oh, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, that sort of thing. Is there gonna be, you know, some compensation for that?
I can't speak to the cursive issue. I'm not versed on it, I'm sorry. It hasn't come up in any conversations I've had. So
Actually-
it's something that we need to look at.
Actually, cursive writing has not been in the curriculum as far as the adopted component. Do teachers teach it? Yes, they do. Is handwriting a dying art? Yes, it is, and I think it's a sad thing. But in the day of technology, it's going by the wayside. Do I think it's gonna go away completely? Absolutely not, it can't. I mean, we still have to have that written form of communication. There are kids today that can't read cursive. So I don't think that going to the Common Core is going to make any difference with respect to that. However, I know you talked